Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and the foremost guests. On behalf of the Forum of Mayors Bureau, as its chair, my name is Danila Arsovska. I'm the mayor of Skopje. I would like to welcome you all for being here at this fourth edition of the UN Forum of Mayors. I would like to extend a warm welcome to all participants, to all mayors, to all attendees. Before moving forward, I would just like to give you some short information on how you can choose your language of choice. As you know, we have English, French, Russian, Arabic, and Spanish, both thanks to the Global Cities Hub and the city of Geneva. As you know, we as cities are at the forefront at humanity's most pressing challenges. And especially in Europe, over 75% of the population are living in cities. I think that the challenges we are facing on a day-to-day basis is not something that governments can resolve on their own. And cities are those, first, who are the closest to the citizens, but also those who can help address these issues in a more efficient and more effective manner. We have become, as cities, key partners in tackling the major crises that countries are facing, and I think that maybe we are the key stakeholder in achieving the sustainable goals. The Forum of Mayors, as you know, is serving as a platform of ongoing exchange. We are learning from each other. We are exchanging knowledge. We are working on how to resolve each other's issues, and what we have learned from the last Forum of Mayors meeting that we had here last year was that most of our challenges that we are facing are same. And by discussing, by exchanging, by working together, we can also learn from each other and find easier way on how to tackle these challenges. This year's forum has its fourth edition, and it's themed Cities Summit of the Future, which brings together us as city leaders to just deliberate on the ramifications for local authorities in line with the Pact of the Future, which was adopted by the United Nations member states in New York just a couple of weeks ago. I think that we stand here to highlight the diverse ways in which cities can substantially contribute to the implementation of the Pact for a brighter future for humanity and to accelerate the implementation of the sustainable development. As emphasized by the United Nations Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, local engagement is vital for rescuing the SDGs. I would now like to call for the video message from the Secretary General Guterres, where he would like to share his thoughts on the role of cities in achieving the SDGs. Please.
Distinguished mayors, dear friends, I want to thank the Forum of Mayors for your leadership and for advancing progress on the Sustainable Development Goals. Cities are on the front lines of shaping a world that is more prosperous, sustainable, inclusive and interconnected. This gathering shows you are once again on the front lines of innovation and change. The Summit of the Future has just concluded, and you are already joining forces to move the agenda where it matters most, at the local level, on the ground, in people's lives. As Secretary General, I recognize and applaud your pivotal role, which is one reason I created the UN Advisory Group on Local and Regional Governments. I've seen how cities are engine rooms to transform sustainable development goals into sustainable development realities. By working to tackle the climate crisis and create green jobs, by building inclusive and equitable communities, by helping families stay afloat during economic hard times, cities are magnets for hope and opportunity for so many people around the world. Thank you for transforming that hope into action. Thank you for coming together to take the vision of the Summit of the Future forward for cities of the future. We need your energy, initiatives, and ideas more than ever.
I think that we should greet the remarks from our Secretary General Guterres on the role of cities. So please. I would now briefly like to introduce the heads of the international organizations, representatives, and partners which are on the podium. So besides the cities, these are, I would say, the most important stakeholders that we have, and also the most important partners and supporters that a city can have when we are talking about local development. First, I would like to greet Ms. Tatiana Molcean, the Executive Secretary of the United Nations Economic Commissions for Europe, UNESA. Ms. Tatiana Valoivaya, Director General of the United Nations Office at Geneva. Mr. Michael Molnar, Deputy Executive Director of UN Habitat. Mr. Matthew Murray, Secretary General of the Congress of Local and Regional Authorities of the Council of Europe. Ms. Carola Gunnarsson, Vice President of UCLG, and of the Swedish Association of Local Authorities and Regions. Mr. Stuart Maggins, the Deputy Director General of the International Union for Conservation of Nature. And Ms. Anne Tu Dong, the Co-Director of the Global Cities Hub. I would now like to ask you to join me in welcoming Ms. Molcean for her opening remarks. Ms. Molcean, please.
Thank you so much. Excellencies, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, mayors and deputy mayors, and to everyone that is today with us here. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome you all to this Forum of Mayors meeting, and I'm really honored to see so many of you gathered this today from every corner of the globe. I will like to emphasize a few things before we start with the distinguished speakers on the panel as organizers of this forum. So this year, the 4th edition, we have 70 cities, including 45 mayors and deputy mayors, alongside other cities' representatives, which are here to share their experience. And what is very important, I particularly wanted to emphasize that this year we have participants that are both from major metropolitan centers, but also mid-sized cities. And this diverse representation, not only in terms of, let's say, the size of the cities, it's also we have from the north, from the south, from eastern, western parts of our region, but also globally. We have a global reach, a truly global reach. And this is why, as you have also heard from the Secretary General just a few minutes ago in his statement, it's a global implication of the cities into the future, into the pact and implementation, to put in practice the pact of the future. But before discussing about and going into more details about the role and how the cities can contribute to the implementation of the Pact of the Future, which I think you already started doing, frankly speaking, I would like to take a moment to express appreciation to all those without whose support this forum, these discussions would not be possible. And first of all, of course, to the Secretary General, and who through his video message really underscored and emphasized the crucial role that you, the mayors, play in shaping a new, expanded, revigorated and inclusive multilateralism. Let me also appreciate the contribution of the colleagues from other regional commissions. Like you see, we have other regional commissions who have been very supportive in and engaged in the organization and bringing here mayors and representatives from their region. Also, here on the podium today, and a big thank you to the Director General, Ms. Tatiana Valoivaya, for supporting the forum presence in Geneva, the UN Habitat for their dedication to the urban agenda, as well as the cooperation that we have with the Congress and local and regional authorities, which has really helped us to greater promotion in Europe and beyond. We also welcome the United Cities and local governments with whom I had the privilege to engage during their World Assembly in New York just a week ago or 2 weeks ago, as well as the International Union for Conservation of Nature and the Global Cities Hub. A special thank you also to the mayors of Skopje, Braga, Glasgow and Geneva for your year-long efforts, and to our advocate, architect Norman Foster, for your motivational support and inspiring speeches like the one we had earlier before the opening of this formal segment. Also, we have the countries who have been in particular supporting, of course, Switzerland, who are also a host, Italy and Hungary, who have made this forum possible. Why I'm underlining this? Because I think and this is what cities emphasize most of all, the partnerships and the cooperation that we have is what makes the difference in our action. And last week in New York at the Summit of the Future, we have seen how the Pact for the Future has been adopted, but the adoption was based to a large extent based on the partnerships and the discussions and involvement of each and everyone. And we have seen the local level, the mayors in particular, having a more clear voice in these discussions. It's an important roadmap for all of us. It speaks about climate action, digital transformation, social inclusion, and international cooperation and governance. This year, Forum of Mayors, it's about the cities of the future, City Summit of the future. And it's not without due consideration to all those aspects, because we truly believe, and I think everyone who's here in this room believes, that cities and mayors and local authorities are the ones that are at the forefront and can really make a contribution in each and every sector. First of all, of course, environment and climate action. You have connected urban resilience and sustainable urban planning to many of the issues that are now key on the agenda when we talk about climate action. You have been all engaged in redesigning cities that they are more sustainable. Unchecked growth and consumption are key topics that we are addressing now, but also I know that each one of you has taken considerable efforts to ensure that the cities protect nature and preserve soil and land. Another area that sometimes not everyone envisage as directly linked to the cities is security or eliminating violence and armed conflicts. But in fact, it's from the cities, from the good cooperation within the cities, from the culture that is built within a city, from the dialogue with the neighbors, from creating spaces of interaction, is that we contribute to the preventing measures when it comes to security. Technology, smart cities, it's yet another area that is very well linked to the topics that we have seen in the Pact, as well as when we talk about issues of governance and the involvement of local and regional authorities in the work of the United Nations. I know that many have been calling, and you including, to have an enhanced role for the cities, for the mayors, for the local authorities to engage in the work of the UN, to contribute to the declarations and statements, and to make recommendations to member states. And this participation is valuable, and it ensures that local and regional authorities are recognized as both de facto but also de jure active actors within the UN system. This forum, in fact, represents maybe a small but certainly a significant step towards transforming this global governance that we are now trying to improve and to update. And I'm really grateful for all of you making it possible and advancing this idea. Before I conclude, I have a more practical approach in my statement, and I would like to also take this opportunity to emphasize one of the beautiful initiatives that have been under the umbrella of both the forum, but UNICE has been encouraging, and I would like to take this opportunity while we are at the beginning of this forum. This is the initiative that we have, the Trees in Cities Challenge, which this year achieved a remarkable milestone. We have 19 million trees planted in nearly 100 cities. And it's a global initiative dedicated to local resilience, the SDGs, and climate action. And I invite all of you to continue and to join this initiative. Equally, the Coalition on Trees in Dry Cities, a platform which I launched at COP28 in Dubai, open to cities, but also governments and international organizations and NGOs. This platform really provides targeted support to cities facing the unique challenge of dry climates and dry season. So with that in mind, with a very practical call to each and everyone, I would like to really express once again the appreciation for the discussions that we have here, and to wish all of us a successful Forum of Mayors. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Malsen. It was really insightful to hear about the role of cities in sustainable development, in new technologies development, and also in being a mediator in conflict and adhering to peace. So I would like to thank you, especially for mentioning the COP28 and the initiative Trees in Cities, as a city that has been one of those that has actively been participating and has started a project of 5 megaparks within its boundaries. I really would like to say that each and every one of you that would join in the initiative would really be doing a great benefit for you yourself, your citizens, and also for future generations to come. I would now like to call on Ms. Tatiana Valovaya, the Director General of the United Nations Office at Geneva. And first, I would like to say that you can use your place or also the podium there. Thank you.
Dear Mayors, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, first and foremost, I would like really to thank everybody who worked so hard to make this event possible. And I'm really encouraged to see how fast the Forum of Mayors has transformed into a multilateral and inclusive platform, enabling local governments to fully participate in global debates and develop collective solutions that respond to people's concerns. The Forum, which is now a UN formal body under the UNEC Committee on Urban Development, Housing and Land Management, has become a unique space for cooperation in the region and well beyond. Today, we all stand at a crucial moment for humanity. And our world faces profound and interconnected challenges: climate change, urbanization, social inequality, and economic instability. At the Summit of the Future, as was already said, governments adopted the Pact for the Future, which provides a framework to reinvigorate our multilateral system to effectively address the challenges of today and tomorrow. It is now the turn of cities to discuss the various implications of the Pact. Cities are the home to over half of the world's population, and by 2050, nearly 70% of people will live in urban areas. This means that the future of the world is in many ways the future of the cities. Therefore, it is very appropriate that this edition of the Forum was renamed the City Summit of the Future. Local governments are at the center of addressing today's complex challenges and crafting solutions for a sustainable and equitable world. Mayors and city governors play a crucial role in how global ambition of the SDGs can transform into local realities that affect each and other one of us. People everywhere are looking to their leaders for solutions to the challenges they face in their daily lives: affordable housing, jobs, clean air, safety and health. Mayors are uniquely positioned to respond because they understand these challenges in a way that transcends short-term political aims. Your proximity to communities means that you see the nuances, hear the voices, and act with urgency. You are the architect of practical and immediate solutions. While every city is unique, many challenges you are facing are common. Solutions developed in one city can inspire others across the world. And it is my hope that the particular spirit of Geneva will guide you all during your exchanges at this forum. The United Nations is committed to strengthening partnerships with the cities. To achieve the SDGs and fulfill the vision of the Pact for the Future, we must integrate local governments into global decision-making. This forum is an important step forward in this direction. The path, therefore, is challenging, but I am confident that the creativity, courage, and commitment of mayors will illuminate the way forward, because you are not only shaping your cities, you are shaping the future of our world. And I really hope that being here in the Palais des Nations, and I really want to welcome you back, many of you, to the Palais des Nations, will inspire you. Because Palais des Nations, with its surrounding park, it's an absolutely unique urban space here in Geneva. It's a building which was built practically 100 years ago. We are now undergoing a major project of renovation. And the aim of this project is to preserve the heritage, but make these buildings fit to be a conference center for in the 21st century. At the same time, we are trying to preserve and develop our green space, our park. And I really hope that being here in this old but modernizing palais, in our beautiful park, would inspire you. And I really would like to wish all the success to the forum.
Thank you, Ms. Malovaya. It was nice to hear about the challenges that we're all facing are the same, not only the climate change, but also social inequality and economic development. And of course, being in line with the Pact of the Future, I think it's crucial what you said, that most of our challenges are common, but sharing solution among cities can be actually the main thing that can unite us and can help with these exchanges be better for the citizens. I would like to thank you for this inspiring speech, and hopefully this visit today, the meeting today, and the UN building will be something that's going to inspire you to go home with thoughts on how we can reconnect and have really credible solutions and something concrete for the next Forum of Mayors. I would now like to invite Mr. Michal Molnar, the Deputy Executive Director of UN Habitat, to address you, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and the Honorable Mayor of Skopje, Executive Secretary of the UNECE, Director General of UNOG, Secretary General of the Congress of Local and Regional Authorities of the Council of Europe, Vice President of UCLG, Deputy Director General of IUCN, and co-director of the Global Cities Hub in Geneva. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed a great honor for me to be with you here already for the second time. I remember my presence last year, and I'm happy to see many familiar faces, but also many new faces, and happy to hear that we are growing as the Mayors Forum here in Geneva, which is particularly important. I'm also happy to represent Secretary General Antonio Guterres and follow up on his inspiring remarks that that you have all already heard. And indeed, focusing this year in the Mayors Forum and naming it Summit of the Future just after the Summit of the Future in New York is extremely opportune. We find ourselves indeed at a pivotal moment in history where cities are at the forefront of tackling global challenges, rapid urbanization, climate change, inequality, and economic uncertainty. Yet within these challenges lies also a unique opportunity. It's a chance to bring the newly adopted Pact for the Future to life, and a commitment made just indeed last week in New York. As UN Habitat, we have always been emphasizing to the member states in New York as they were preparing for the Summit of the Future and negotiating the Pact for the Future with its two important annexes, the Global Digital Compact and the Declaration for Future Generations, that indeed our future was urban. And we were focusing their attention also at the urban dimension of our future and at important aspects that we believed also needed to be addressed, including the increasing role of multi-level governance and the importance played by local and regional governments which you represent. If you have time, I would invite you to specifically look at two paragraphs in the Pact for the Future. Paragraph 25C, which focuses on sustainable urban development and on housing, urban planning, and other related issues, which, of course, at UN Habitat, as the urban agency, but also as the cities and local government agency we are particularly proud of. But also paragraph 83E, which specifically focuses on how to engage and involve representatives of local and regional authorities even more. On this particular piece, Secretary General had an advisory group that focused on cooperation with local and regional governments and prepared for him a set of recommendations. UN Habitat was happy to serve as the Secretariat of Secretary General's advisory board and cooperate very closely also with our colleagues from United Cities and Local Governments, UCLG. So it doesn't end with the Pact for the Future. On the contrary, this is just a new beginning. Also, in this specific aspect of focus on local and regional governments, because Secretary General in that paragraph 83E was asked to come back to the General Assembly in New York with a set of recommendations how to translate this commitment into practical action. And we at UN Habitat will be working with other components of the UN system and with many of you on preparing a report that the Secretary General would then submit to the General Assembly. So as you can see, indeed, it also creates some of these additional opportunities. The vision for the cities of the future is not just about responding to today's problems, but about collectively shaping a future where our cities become incubators of sustainability, inclusivity, and peace. As city leaders, you are not mere observers of that change. You are the architects of a sustainable, inclusive, and resilient urban future. And you are often architects literally. Today, more than half of the world's population lives in urban areas, and as we have heard, by 2050, it will be around 70%. Urbanization is not just about statistics. It represents a transformative force, and urban land cover in developing countries in particular is expected to expand by 78% by 2050. Much of it is yet to be built. The United Nations recognizes the critical importance of local leadership and you have heard it also earlier from the Secretary General, who said cities are where the global agenda meets the lives of everyday citizens. Your leadership is essential for achieving sustainable development goals, and in particular SDG 11 on sustainable cities and communities. And we are talking, of course, about inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable cities. As we reach the halfway point in our journey to achieving the SDGs, now is the time to reflect on our progress and perform a bit of a reality check. And another important tool or vehicle for it is the localization of SDGs, which is central to the Pact for the Future, is crucial because it is at the local level where global goals transform into tangible actions. Cities bring SDGs to life, whether through sustainable infrastructure, climate action, or improving health and well-being. It is our responsibility to improve housing, reduce pollution, expand public transport, and ensure essential services are delivered equitably. By aligning local policies with the SDGs, we can meet both global aspirations and the local needs. Today's discussions in the forum are urgent and practical. The future we seek requires intentional, coordinated, and inclusive action, and the cities of tomorrow will need to prioritize green, nature-based solutions to tackle the climate crisis and reduce environmental impact, embrace smart technologies to provide better services and ensure equitable access. And here, of course, there is a lot of good work already taking place on smart cities. Promote inclusive policies that leave no one behind, especially the marginalized communities, and foster social cohesion and peace, making cities places where diversity is celebrated and human rights are protected. Your leadership, shared experiences, and innovative solutions are invaluable. The deliberations over the coming days, I'm sure, will inspire new approaches to these challenges and foster deeper cooperation across borders, sectors, and different levels of government. On behalf of the Secretary General and also on behalf of the UN family, I reaffirm our full support for your efforts to create sustainable, resilient, and thriving cities for the future, where together we can ensure that they not only overcome today's challenges, but also flourish in the face of future uncertainties, creating a better, sustainable future for all. I would also like to end with, indeed, again, inviting you to our 12th session of the World Urban Forum, which will be taking place in Cairo, in Egypt, from the 4th to the 8th of November. And also to mention the COP29 in Baku just a bit later in November, where global leaders will unite to assess progress made towards advancing housing, sustainable urbanization, and climate action. At COP29 in Baku, Azerbaijan, we will endorse on the 20th of November a high-level ministerial roundtable focusing on multi-sectoral actions, pathways to resilient and healthy cities. The world, once again, will then meet for the next World Urban Forum in 2026, also in Baku, and certainly always encouraging you to take an active role in these important fora, either from your regions or from the practical perspective that you always bring to these fora. Because in Cairo this year, this November, we will meet under the slogan, "It all starts at home." And there is nobody who understands this particular notion better than city mayors. Thank you, and I wish the Mayors Forum this year fruitful deliberations and look forward to working closely with you as we move ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mulnar. And thank you for the inside of the Pact of the Future, especially of paragraph 83E, and the recommendation, as well as the support that you have through the advisory group to the Secretary General of the UN. It was also very nice to hear from your speech that the Mayors Forum is growing. It's something that we have seen from past years, and especially last year when established officially as a UN official body, is that, as you can see today, we have a very diverse group of mayors, not only from Europe, but also already widening the scope of the UN mayors through US, Asia, Africa. So at this point, I can say that we have a really diverse group of men and women mayors here in this meeting today, and hopefully the initiative will continue to grow. I would now like to welcome a very special person, somebody that is truly committed to local governments and that through this past year has been devoted to connecting and uniting initiatives of cities with a really special new energy that really already has concrete results. So, Mr. Matthew Mori, the Secretary General of the Congress of Local and Regional Authorities of the Congress of Europe, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chair. Dear Daniela, I'm always a bit worried when I get such a nice introduction, but thank you very much for your words. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I'm also very happy to be back this year. I should also warn you, I will switch to French at some point for the sake of multilingualism, so beware. I'm very happy to be here a few days after the Summit of the Future and a few hours before you are being asked to adopt the statement of the City Summit of the Future. I, of course, agree with every aspect of this statement that is being put in front of you, but today I would like to talk about one specific aspect of this statement, and that is the one on transforming global governance. Indeed, your statement stresses the importance of evolving local and regional authorities in the work of the UN. The Pact for the Future, Michel mentioned it, the Pact for the Future makes reference to this need. It's not exactly the wording we had hoped for, but it's the wording we have to work with. I would like to mention the example of my own institution, if you allow me, the Council of Europe. 67 years ago, the Council of Europe took the very first steps to institutionalize the dialogue of cities and regions within the institution by the creation of a conference of local and regional authorities. Before that, only member states and national parliaments from our 46 member states were shaping the policy of the institution, and then they decided to create this conference. Now, I was a bit curious, and I went and digged out the speeches that were made 67 years ago when this conference was created to get a bit of the feel in the room. And if you allow me, I'd like to share some parts of these speeches. This is when I switched to French. First, here is a quote about why they thought it was crucial in the early days of the European construction to involve local authorities. I quote, "L'idée est de pallier l'indifférence de l'opinion publique dans nos différents États vis-à-vis de l'Europe. Cette indifférence provient d'une information notoirement insuffisante qui prive la construction européenne de la volonté populaire. Or, il n'est pas possible de trouver zélateurs plus nombreux et plus efficaces que les administrateurs locaux. Les maires constituent un gigantesque ensemble de plusieurs millions d'êtres dont les deux caractéristiques principales sont le dévouement à leurs concitoyens et la confiance personnelle de ces derniers à leur égard." And I would like to make a second quote about the historical nature of this moment 67 years ago. "C'est À ma connaissance, mes chers
As far as I know,
collègues,
dear colleagues,
la première fois dans
this is
l'histoire
the
des
first time in the history
démocraties
of
que
democracies
les pouvoirs locaux
that
sont
local
invités par des
authorities' powers are
représentants parlementaires
invited by
et avec
parliamentary
l'agrément des
representatives
gouvernements
with the,
à donner leur
support
avis
of the government to
sur ce que
give
pourraient
their views
être
on
les
what
modalités de
could
leur
be the modalities
participation
of their
à des
participation
institutions
in
européennes en
European
voie
institutions
d'élaboration.
that are being put
Cette
together.
mémorable innovation
This
ne marque
memorable
pas
innovation
seulement la
is not
volonté
only
d'honorer
the
l'univers
expression of
des
the
élus et
determination
magistrats locaux
of honouring
qui
the
sont
universe of
indispensables à
local
l'existence des
elected persons
sociétés
which are
humaines,
crucial for the existence of
elle
human
exprime
societies.
également le
It is
souci
also
d'éviter que,
the expression of
dans
the
l'avenir,
concern that in
l'Europe
the future
unie ne tombe
Europe
à son
as a
tour
united
dans les erreurs
entity
d'une
does not
centralisation
fall
excessive.
into the errors of excessive
This was in
centralization.
1957, and I believe these speeches have not aged a bit. And I also believe that if you change the word Europe and use the word North Africa, South America, or any other parts of the world, those speeches are still very relevant. Today, the Congress of Local and Regional Authorities of the Council of Europe is one of the two political assemblies of the institution and is involved in every aspect of the work of the Council of Europe. And no one would dream, out of our 46 member states, no one would dream of going back to a Council of Europe without a role for local and regional authorities. Following the Pact for the Future, I'm confident that the UN is also on the right path to achieve its own governance aggiornamento. Finally, your statement emphasizes the need for enhanced decentralization. In Europe, we are lucky enough to live in a continent where the right to local democracy, the right to decentralization, is protected by law. The 46 Council of Europe member states have indeed ratified the European Charter of Local Self-Governance, and we at the Congress are in charge of monitoring its implementation in the 46 member states. And because this treaty has become a core treaty in Europe, one of the very few treaties ratified by all member states of the Council of Europe, we are currently exploring the possibility of opening the treaty for ratification by non-member states, meaning that any country in the world could ratify it. This could be the start of a global movement towards a legal guarantee of local democracy and decentralization, and I hope this opening of the ratification to non-member states will be legally and politically achieved in the coming years, and we will work very hard on that. I have obviously this morning only stressed the very positive aspects of the Pact for the Future, but I'm truly believing that with the people in this room, the mayors, with the civil society, with the associations of local and regional authorities around the world, and with the international organizations around this table, we are going in the right direction. The Pact of the Future is a step in this right direction, and you can count on our continuing support towards a renewed multilateralism. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mori. And indeed, as you have mentioned, signing the charter is something that actually obliges the member states to go forward with the process of decentralization, but I would also highly recommend all the members of cities and countries here present to be the ones that would ratify it as something that's highly beneficial for implementation when you look at local governance on national level. I would now like to continue and invite Ms. Carola Gunnarsson, the Vice President of UCLG, and also representative from the Swedish Association of Local Authorities and Regions, to address the podium.
Thank you very much. Excellencies, dear colleagues, distinguished guests. Today we gather at a challenging moment in history where the common will and resolve of our local and regional governments must rise to meet the unprecedented trials that our world faces. Mayors and governments are stepping forward, not just as implementers of the 2030 agenda, but as leaders in global governance, embodying the spirit of resilient, transformative leadership by governing in partnership. I would like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to the Executive Secretary of UNECE for her support and commitment to the World Assembly of Local and Regional Governments within the framework of the UN General Assembly. We deeply appreciate her efforts to institutionalize and structure this space in a meaningful way, and for her invitation to UCLG to be an integral part of the forum. Our cities and regions are no longer mere geographical entities. They are the beating heart of global change. Global challenges can only be addressed by tackling local issues, and we, as local and regional governments, are true holders of change. For more than a century, the municipal movement has evolved as a self-organized constituency, uniting local and regional governments to ensure our representation in international processes. We have convened the local and regional multilateral system and urged the United Nations to recognize and consolidate this mechanism as a legitimate space for political dialogue. We have laid the groundwork for what we now must build upon. We come to you today fresh from the Summit of the Future with mixed feelings. On one hand, we have seen a specific commitment from the United Nations Secretary General, a commitment reflected in the latest meeting of his advisory group on local and regional governments. The Pact for the Future is somewhat of a relief after the possibility of being left out of the final text. However, we must acknowledge that what we have achieved is a reduction of the recognition of local and regional governments' role and the limitation to the implementation sphere, rather than reflecting the nature of our constituency as political actors, as a distinctive level of government. Despite this, we are not deterred. The language in the pact may not fully reflect the level of ambition we hoped for. However, the opportunities opened by this wording and the retained language on some of our key priorities, such as housing, care, culture, and gender, present an important window towards the upcoming World Social Summit. Our commitment to a new era of inclusive multilateralism is unwavering. We support the vision of the United Nations Secretary General's Our Common Agenda, which call for a system where cities and local governments are recognized as equal partners in decision-making with a formal and permanent status within the United Nations. The advisory group established by the Secretary General has been instrumental in advancing our political commitment. It has demonstrated how local leadership can drive transformative change, localizing key transitions necessary for sustainable development. Our first deliverable aligns local priorities with global agendas, showcasing how we care for people through equitable public services, how we care for our planet through participatory climate action, and how we care for democracy by co-creating governance rooted in the rights and aspirations of all residents. But this isn't enough. We also call for a truly inclusive multilateralism where cities have the space to participate in shaping global policies. We advocate for mechanisms that ensure universal and democratic representation for local governments, recognizing our unique contributions and ensuring our voices are heard at the intergovernmental processes. Our third deliverable presents tangible examples of how local and regional governments can collaborate with the UN system, proving that we are not just implementers, but essential partners in crafting solutions and driving processes. This brings me to the Global Task Force and the commitment of the United Cities and local governments to facilitate an organized constituency, mayors speaking on behalf of mayors. The role of the Global Task Force has been critical in strengthening our voice and ensuring that local and regional governments are recognized as distinct political actors within the UN system. The Forum of Mayors has the potential to consolidate our partnerships, a space where mayors and local leaders can engage directly with member states and other stakeholders. Our commitment is to be active partners, to generate policies, to work closely with member states and the Secretariat, and to be steadfast partners of the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe. The revision of the terms of reference for the Forum of Mayors is timely, as it reflects our shared commitment to building a more inclusive, networked and effective multilateral system. We are not just here to observe, we are here to contribute. We are here to demonstrate that local and regional governments are not secondary actors, but central to achieving global sustainable development. You can count on the organized constituency of local and regional governments, on UCLG and our Global Task Force. Our cities, our regions, and our people are counting on us. Let us not fail them. We are in this together, and together we will build a better future for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gunnarsson. It was really nice to hear about the Secretary General's advisory group. And of course, as you mentioned, mayors are the unique group that are closest to the citizens, and they tend to their day-to-day needs. So they should be included into the everyday agenda of the intergovernmental organizations, but also in all national policies that are being created so that they will have a more effective implementation. Thank you very much for your insight. And now I would like to go forward with Mr. Stuart Maggins, the Deputy Director General of the International Union for Conservation of Nature. Please.
Madam Chair, mayors and deputy mayors, fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to thank the organisers for giving the International Union for the Conservation of Nature the opportunity to propose to you why nature and biodiversity must be a key component within cities for the future. Not so long ago, the built environment was viewed with suspicion by the conservation community. And it is true, the cities have an outsized footprint in terms of global biodiversity loss, climate change and pollution. But cities equally can be the engine of change, challenging established conventions and delivering innovative approaches for the betterment of people and their environment. Last week I was in China working with the renowned proponent of sponge cities, Professor Yu Kongqian. For 20 years, he has challenged conventional norms and helped create ecologically resilient, economically viable green infrastructure that has reinvigorated the local economies of 250 Chinese cities. Nature within cities is much more than those green spaces represented by beautiful municipal parks and recreational grounds. It is the restoration of lost ecosystem functions into city dwellers' lives in ways that make tangible differences to nature, to physical and emotional well-being. In IUCN, we refer to this as nature-based solutions. It represents a green social contract. Nature will continue to demonstrably reward and safeguard society, and society in turn will consciously recognise, value, maintain and enhance the species and ecological processes from which such benefits flow. Cities with different economic circumstances are increasingly embracing this understanding into their local planning processes. In Paris, more than 100,000 trees have been planted since 2020 to combat rising temperatures and air pollution, thereby ensuring that everyone has easy access to green natural space. In Kigali, major investments have been made to control persistent flooding by establishing extensive new urban wetlands on contaminated industrial sites and by re-establishing stormwater retaining vegetative cover across the 3 mountains that surround the city. In Bangkok, the site of an abandoned tobacco factory in the heart of the city was transformed as an extension to Benjikiti Park, cleaning putrid canal water by channeling it through a series of new wetlands and making it clean enough to bathe in. Of all the reasons for bringing back biodiversity to our cities, I would like now to highlight one: water management. Contrary to conventional wisdom, flooding does not simply occur when there is too much rainfall. It is a combination of more water reaching the same point at the same time. Over several decades, we have inadvertently exacerbated flood risk by a strategy of evacuating as much water as possible from particular locations as quickly as possible. We have excessively concreted over nature at our peril. We need to invert this logic. First, retain as much water as possible by enhancing seepage. For example, Paris removed the impermeable surfacing on 6,000 parking spaces and lifted more than 13,000 square metres of asphalt. Second, slow the flow of water. For example, by revegetating hillside slopes, as Kigali is doing, or decanalising concreted waterways, as Vienna did with the nature restoration of the Lysine Creek. Third, create more space for water through new urban wetlands. This is a feature of Chinese sponge cities. And finally, combine all of the above with sensible engineering structures to protect the most vulnerable location and people. Nature-based solutions seeks to complement and thus make better use of built infrastructure, not to replace it. In 2021, IUCN introduced a new institutional membership category for local governments, and European cities such as Paris and Marseille were some of the first subnational jurisdictions to join our union. We are committed to building long-term partnerships with subnational governments. Cities will feature as a key priority in our new 4-year programme, and we are a proud partner of the Berlin Urban Nature Pact, which, together with ICLE and the Municipality of Berlin, has framed distinct nature-based solutions to address the biodiversity and climate crises and put cities on a pathway for biodiversity recovery by 2030. Let me conclude with 3 short messages. First, future cities need to integrate nature and nature-based solutions into their planning processes. Secondly, we should not delay this process of designing with nature. And finally, there exists sufficient proof of concept to deploy now that enhances resilience, better protects properties and livelihoods, and creates new jobs. So to wrap up, I will leave you with this question. Does a city of the future have a future without biodiversity? I wish you all success to the forum. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mergens. This was a really insightful address, and I would like to say that integrating natures into city is something that's crucial for city survival and also for tackling climate change. But you are right, we should not delay with all of the mentioned above. I would like to now welcome Ms. Anne Tu Dong, the co-director of the Global Cities Hub, to address the audience. So please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Excellencies, dear mayors, deputy mayors, ladies and gentlemen, it is really with great pleasure that the Global Cities Hub is taking part in this 4th edition of the Forum of Mayors. As an organization that connects local and regional governments to the UN and other international organizations in Geneva, we're a very proud partner of this forum. We have supported the forum from its very inception because we believe that something important and different was happening here at the UN. Important because we've heard it this morning, mayors are uniquely positioned to bridge the gap between global governance and local communities. They are at the front lines of building trust between institution and people, working to shape a more inclusive multilateral system that can deliver for everyone, everywhere. Different because for the first time, mayors are participating in a formal UN body where they can speak with their own voice and provide recommendations directly to UN member states. This is a significant shift, one that recognizes the vital role of cities in addressing global challenges. So allow me to now congratulate UNECE, but also its member states for the tremendous efforts that has gone into bringing all of us here today to discuss the Pact of the Future and its crucial local implications. The Global Cities Hub has worked very hard with all UN Regional Economic Commission to ensure the participation of mayors from across the globe. It is both exciting and encouraging to see how interest in this forum has grown since 2020, which was the first edition under COVID. So it's great to see you here, in person in the room. While we were unable to accommodate all requests from mayors outside the UNECE region this year, we remain hopeful that future editions will welcome an even broader range of cities. The Forum of Mayors offers a remarkable chance to bridge global ambitions with local realities and to build a more inclusive and participatory form of multilateralism. It is therefore deeply disappointing that in the Pact for the Future, adopted last week in New York, states weakened down language on the engagement of local and regional governments with the UN. And I think UCLG referred to this earlier. Thank you. This decision makes the forum even more essential as the sole formal avenue for local and regional governments to engage with the UN. We therefore call upon member states present in the room today to consider extending the forum's mandate and also deepening their engagement with this body. Ladies and gentlemen, the local and global challenges we face are interconnected. It is only through a united and inclusive approach that we'll be able to reach the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, that we'll be able to define what should come after the Sustainable Development Goals and create a future that is sustainable, equitable, and resilient for all. So I thank you for your attention, and I wish this forum a very successful meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wong. It's really nice to have the support of the Global Cities Hub, and I do think that it's crucial in the continuing efforts that cities have to be on the top of the agendas in the international intergovernmental organizations. I would now like to continue with the next speaker, but before that I would like to first give regards to the two deputy chairs which are present here with us. First, Susan Aitken, the city leader from Glasgow, UK. Also, Mr. Ricardo Rio, the mayor from Braga. Welcome, Mayor. Thank you. Which is also the co-chair of the UN Forum of Mayors and also the honorary president or chair, as I might say, Mr. Sami Kanan, who is the deputy city mayor of Geneva and also the president of the Global Cities Hub. So thank you, Mr. Khan, for all of your efforts. And of course, last but not least, I would like to thank Paula Deda and the entire team that was working with great efforts to make today possible. So thank you, Paula, for everything. I would now like to continue with inviting His Excellency Lord Norman Foster to deliver the keynote speech. So please join me in welcoming him. Thank you.
If we go back 35 years, it takes us to the 1980s, 1989. What has changed since then? Because from the perspective of 1989, we are now in the city of the future. So what has not changed? The fact, which we take for granted, perhaps stating the obvious, and that cities generate wealth. They generate 90% of global wealth. A significant city, the GDP, is the equivalent of that of a small nation. They're also, on the downside, responsible for 70% of global emissions. And again, perhaps to state the obvious, the future doesn't suddenly arrive sometime in the future. The future starts today. Today is the first day of the future. And if we, as civic leaders, your decisions shape that future. And they're conscious acts. Nothing happens by accident. And again, decisions should be based on evidence, should be based on data, not fashion. To give an idea perhaps of balance, we know that in the last 20 years, 2000 to 2020 to be precise, that we had a half-degree increase in temperature. And that made heat waves much worse. And more people died of heat as a result of that. Something like 116,000 people who would not have died if the temperature had not risen. And we're well aware of the media emphasis on such statistics. What is not reported is that more people, their lives were saved through the increase in temperature because more people die of cold than heat. So something like 283,000 lives were saved. So selective reporting distorts the reality. I mean, just another instance of that is that reading the papers, you would assume that the planet is burning. Forest fires, like never before. The reality is that if you check the only accurate records which are a result of NASA's monitoring, the trend in terms of forest fires is a very, very powerful decline for all kinds of reasons that I won't go into here. So what I'm saying is not in any way to underestimate the importance of rising temperatures and the fact that we have to combat that, and the fact that you, as mayors of cities, have the power to do that, and your power is greater than that of governments. The reality is that if the health of the planet is really aligned with the health of its citizens, so what is good for the planet is also good for the citizens. Those two interests go hand in hand. Last year on this occasion, and I apologize perhaps for a little repetition, the nature of a city is twofold. It's a collection of many, many buildings held together by the infrastructure, the urban glue of infrastructure, the connectivity of mobility, the boulevards, the highways, the metro systems, the parks, the bridges, all the things that establish the DNA, the carbon footprint, the beauty or ugliness, the attraction, the economic viability is that infrastructure. And that is designed, it's mobile, it changes, and it determines our climatic future. So what if we're talking about a city, the expansion of a city, a village, a neighborhood, a town? What kind of things should we be encouraging, and what kind of things should we be discouraging to achieve an ideal vision for something which is better than exists at the moment for the city of the future? In many ways, to look far ahead, you have to look far back. It's walkable, it's friendly, it's compact, it encourages pedestrianisation, it encourages light transport like bicycles, it discourages sprawl, it discourages the car. That's not in any way to underestimate the importance of the vehicle, and I'll come to that in due course. Those cities which are compact as opposed to sprawling are healthier, and statistically their carbon footprint is significantly less. Also, in those kind of cities, people live longer, they're healthier. And, as we've heard about the importance of nature, those cities which are compact preserve nature, preserve biodiversity. And that's not really, it is in many ways about being kind to our animal friends. But there's a very powerful link. If you look at many of the reports of the World Health Organization, or the renewed interest in biophilia, A.E.O. Wilson of 1981, inventing that term, that's crucial to our health. So, as mayors, you have certain powers in terms of zoning. You can encourage inclusivity. Zoning is a relatively new invention, and not surprisingly, very well intentioned. It was about keeping the city, which was dirty through heavy manufacturing, to put that somewhere else in the interest of hygiene, of cleanliness. Well intentioned, but many things have changed since then, and that zoning of exclusivity discourages the very nature of the neighborhood, of the compact neighborhood, which has proximity, access directly by walking to work, and the nature of much of industry. Of course, much of industry is still dirty, but much of new industry is clean. It's compatible with schools, with shops, with leisure, with sports, with parks. So zoning should encourage that proximity. And in terms of longevity, also, we know that social contact, the absence of loneliness, which happens when you get into a suburbanization, also is a factor in terms of people living longer. You also, as mayors, have extraordinary powers in terms of what you can encourage or discourage through the system of planning consents. And here I wear several different hats, if you like. I'm advocate for the Forum of Mayors, which is why I'm here, and why I believe passionately in the cause of this forum and the United Nations. I'm also here representing a foundation, which I'll talk about shortly, and I'm also here as an urbanist concerned with issues of the city, master planning, so I engage directly with mayors on a number of master planning projects, and I'm also, as an architect, involved in individual buildings. And I know from first-hand experience that some of those buildings, the enterprises being given consents to move into a community, some of those enterprises will provide everything. They'll provide the restaurants, the gym, the hairdressers, the dry cleaning. And what happens to the communities around those buildings? Especially if, say, it's one of those enterprises which encourages a 3-day work week or a work from home. What happens is that the fabric of that neighborhood disintegrates. The small traders have no business. There are other enterprises. I can think of one, for example. Bloomberg also has passionate interest in cities, C40, and they consciously will provide a high degree of welfare for the workforce in terms of a pantry, but they will resist the temptation to provide those other facilities. Quite the reverse. On one headquarters which I was involved with, finished some years ago, creates an arcade to encourage local traders, bars, restaurants, gyms. So that is one is negative and one is positive. The same is true, I could give countless examples. A consent for a megastore, which will drain away the trade from a high street, and then everybody turns around and says, the high street's collapsing, the fabric, the social fabric. Not surprising, because there's a disconnect between the holistic relationship of these decisions. So in the city of the future, a number of things work in parallel. There is a parallel between the individual buildings which collectively add up to a city and the city as an infrastructure. Those decisions as mayors which you make. Let's take the building that I mentioned, for example, Bloomberg. It could also be one of several buildings which work in terms of improving the quality of air. So a past generation building is a sealed box. It recirculates refrigerated air, and not surprisingly, it is also related to a kind of sick building syndrome. The new generation of buildings are about breathing large volumes of filtered, climate-controlled air. They're healthier. Now, when I started practice, I believed that subjectively. I just thought if you had a breathing building and you had lots of natural light, then it would be better. But I couldn't prove it. The difference between now and then is that there have been countless studies. The most recent one, 2016, by the Harvard School of Public Health, which scientifically proves that people are healthier, they operate better, they're happier, they're more responsive to crisis, they absorb information. So what is true of the building? And interestingly, I was party to a study not that long ago, and looking at the attitudes of younger generations, and those younger generations, for a building which has proven green credentials, they will gravitate towards that company for less money. And also, I'm very aware that the kind of buildings that I'm describing, those are sought after. If they're built, they're fully occupied. And not surprisingly, a lot of those earlier generation, which are perfect, incidentally, as I made the point 1 year ago, they're ideal for conversion, for recycling. And recycling a building is the ultimate in sustainability rather than tearing it down and building it again. Those are ideal for residential. And you could have a wonderful trade-off between the political body, the people who are in debt, the banks on those buildings, to provide a percentage of those for key workers who cannot work from home, those who police, those who look after the sick, the firemen, and so on. Of course, all of that is true, as we have heard about the city and the quality of air, the ability to plant trees, not just to improve carbon dioxide and improve the air quality. And don't forget that 10 million people die every year as a result of poor air quality. A lot of it caused by burning fossil fuel for heating and cooking, and many of those as children. So in many ways, the idea of planting trees which will give shade, which will reduce the heat island effect of a city, make it more comfortable, improve the quality of life. All of these things go hand in hand. Let me just take one example. In my role, as I described, related to the foundation, we have an Institute for Sustainable Cities, which has a one-year course. It brings students from around 24, 25 countries around the world, and they are subject to two influences. One is the best of academia, and the other is hands-on practice. So they're exposed to a network of experts on every issue of the city, whether it's water, pollution, artificial intelligence, and then for hands-on experience, they work with the community leaders of a city. And typically, for a one-year course, there are 3 pilot cities. To give one example, and the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, are woven into this course with the students and also with the city communities. So one of those cities, Athens, and the students analyzing how do you plant more trees in a neighborhood of a city which is really dense, and you move around that city and it's really tight. There are no spaces on the pavement. And quite interestingly, they come up with a proposition that all the streets are two-way, and that's why there's a huge amount of congestion. If you did alternate streets one way, you would reduce the amount needed for movement. You would increase the amount that was available for the necessity of on-street parking until you find a better solution to that. But vitally, you unlock space for trees. The important thing here is that you cannot look at one aspect of a city in isolation from the other. Here, it's linked to mobility. Then there's the use of tools. A lot of what I'm saying, you can say, well, no, some of that's opinion, some of it's subjective. How do you get down to the data? In this instance, we are using, as a city lab, digital tools. We're using screens, we're using information, and before a decision is made along the lines that I've just described, you can simulate it. You can show it graphically on a screen, and you can show, as you tune one aspect, the implication in terms of reducing carbon, increasing, decreasing congestion. And that tool for the city of the future now, which we are using with specialist skills, we're showing the potential for those communities. Say a group from Athens could come to the City Lab, see that digital installation, the screen up there, somebody's moving a cursor, they show the image of the street in real time, they show a simulation of adjusting that, changing it, and you can see immediately the result. So the possibility of of engaging a community in a combination of inspiration from the top, you the mayors leading from the top, but also engaging that community with information, so it's a combination bottom-up approach. And I talk from real experience on a hospital where, having designed the hospital and then persuaded the hospital authorities to create a full-size mock-up in a warehouse outside Philadelphia, everybody goes round that and they see it firsthand. The nurses, the first responders, they all have their criticism. The surgeons, the doctors. And all of those criticisms are then modified. So what is true of a very large building for health is also true of a city. And then perhaps if we talk about mobility and we talk about data, on mobility, we're all familiar with the kind of anchors for the future of hydrogen, electrification. But it's just worth a word of caution to question, because 80% of the electricity that we generate, and you need that for carbon, you need it if you're squirting electricity into a battery. Remember that 80%, more than 80%, is generated by fossil fuel, and not much more than 10% by the renewables of wind and solar. So if you're squirting dirty electricity into an electric vehicle, whether it's a truck, a car, or a bus, then essentially it's a dirty vehicle. And of course that brings the imperative to cleaner energy. And as an aside, the production of the electric vehicle is in its embedded carbon. And this is something, when we talk about sustainability, we have to also think about the carbon which is embedded in the process of making something. And making that car is more carbon intensive than a conventional vehicle. So much so, if the energy is totally clean, you still have to drive that car 8,000 kilometers before it's green. And if the electricity is dirty, you have to drive it 80,000 kilometers before it starts to break even. Now, you might conclude I'm anti-car. The reverse is true. I'm a car freak. I curated, at the invitation of the Guggenheim Bilbao, an exhibition called Motion, which celebrated the car, but also tried to put the car into a historical perspective. And if I talk about learning about the future from the past, then many of you will know that at the turn of the century, the 19th to the 20th, there were more electric cars on the roads of many countries than there were internal combustion. And also in that exhibition, I showed imagery from the 1950s of the driverless car. And it's not that big a leap of information, of imagination. If we think about, already we have solar panels which we can walk on. It's not a big jump to imagine those being the pavements. It's not a big jump to imagine a technology where the roads become harvesters of energy, and induction charges the road, charges the vehicle as it drives over it. And the driverless car, which is fascinating as a concept, and I've often said that the science fiction of my youth is the reality of today. And recently in San Francisco and Daly City, the Waymo is supreme, and the driverless vehicle is running millions of miles and supplying millions of customers as an absolute routine. And recently I was with one group that I'm working with in Korea, Hyundai, and I was looking at their concept for aerial mobility, which is literally just a few years away. And it's vertical takeoff and landing. It has 8 rotors, surprisingly quiet, great safety factor if up to 5 of those rotors still function, 3 are out, then it's still flyable. And it's designed as an aerial taxi, has a pilot and 4 seats. But as was noted, it's already in the imagination, in the design, anticipating that it will be pilotless in the same way that the Waymo vehicle is driverless. So in all of this, there's a repeating word, and it's energy. And the key to the city of the future, I would propose, is clean energy. And what is the future of energy? First of all, we can talk about the importance of renewables, no question. But in parallel, we have a strange vortex which is happening, and that is that we never, when we use something like this, we never really think too much about the data centers which make it possible. And those data centers are vast. They are consuming more and more energy, and water, and natural resources, and minerals. And that's a story which I won't even go into, but it's a big, big story. The implication of mining, the potential weaponization of energy. And I do express some concern about the energy density, the wallpapering over of the countryside, the destruction of biodiversity by intrusive wind turbines, solar cells, which have a 20-year life. Nobody's quite worked out how to recycle them. So I'm also aware that we have the technology already for a micro-industrialized form of energy. Extraordinarily safe, nuclear battery, which is tiny, 2 containers, 10 megawatts, can power a town, entire Manhattan city block. And also the prospect of fusion. So if I make an optimistic leap into that future, then in that future, we look back and we see some of the potential to destroy the very biodiversity of nature that we seek to preserve. And in many ways, the cure is worse than the illness. But in that future, I see the potential of human ingenuity. And I would suggest that history is on the side of that. We have a climate crisis, we have rising sea levels. But in the past, the threats to cities were as real then as the climate crisis is today. And I could go through the list, the DNA of London. We never think of its brick terraces, its Georgian terraces, as a response to fireproof construction, the introduction of building codes, which didn't happen, all the consequence of the Great Fire of London. When we see Central Park and the reservoir and clean water, which we take for granted, we don't think that was cholera in the middle of the 19th century, or the Thames embankment, modern sanitation, cholera. Or seismic construction. We can design buildings today which don't collapse when there's an earthquake. Of course, some of them do, but those which don't have been designed with the lessons of the Lisbon earthquake. And the Great Fire of Chicago, we take for granted. Elevators which move us up and down buildings. Fireproof construction, high-rise. Didn't happen until the Great Fire of Chicago. So, moving away, and the Chicago that we take for granted today, again, did not happen by accident. The greenery, the relationship to the river, all of that was a conscious act of planning. And the planner, who was commissioned, interestingly, by a group of businessmen who then persuaded the governors, the mayors, if you like, of Chicago and Greater Chicago, he said in 1909, Burnham, Daniel Burnham, make no small plans, make big plans. Remember, a noble, logical diagram will never die. Let your watchword be order. Let your beacon be beauty. Think big. Thank you.
I would like to thank you for the insightful and very inspiring speech. Of course, we're all thinking big, but what are the opportunities? This is something that we need to work on jointly, so I do believe that success will present itself only if we work for it. You said some things which I think are probably for the benefit of everybody. In the context of the compact cities, the clean energy, but maybe that's something that I think you stressed was the significance of data, something that really, I think, hit a chord with everybody here, is that we underutilize data in our everyday lives, in the way that we implement our policies, in the way that we create policies. So maybe this is something that we should work on future cities of the Forum of the Cities summits as a special maybe session. So thank you so much for your very inspirational speech. And now, before continuing with the first segment of today, I would like to go first forward to the adoption of the agenda. Of course, this reflects the structure of the meeting, and it's a detailed program of what we have as Forum of Mayors. I hope that you found it at our website and were able to go through it. And of course, I would just like to, before I propose the adoption, just maybe ask for a small switch from the item 10 to be switched with item 9. This would be the election of the next session chairpersons, to be switched with the statements from the mayors of the future of the cities, because some mayors have actually informed us that they would need to depart a bit earlier today. So I would now like to kindly invite you to adopt the agenda if there are no remarks on it. Are there maybe some objections on the proposed changes? As I see no hands in the air, I would now like to conclude that the agenda is adopted as stated. Before going forward with the next session, the segment of sustainable development and financing for development, I would like to invite all the mayors and deputy mayors in the room. I would like to first ask you to stay in your places and invite all of the present mayors and deputy mayors for the group photo that we are planning. So some of you up front, maybe the taller ones behind, and please. Well, no. Last time we did that mistake, so this is carefully planned in advance. So please, yes, the photographer is up front, so the taller ones in the back, and yes. Is everybody in order? Okay. Thank you. I would kindly ask you to proceed to your places so we can continue. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. No. Would you please take your seats?
Hello? Can you please take your seats? Thank you. I think it's... Can you hear it?
Yes, it's lowered again, I think. Sorry? It's there, on the speaker there, yeah. So we are continuing with the first session, Sustainable Development and Financing for Development. So this is going to be a highly interesting session. And of course, before commencing, I just want to just share with you some ground rules. After the presentation that we have from our guest speaker today, you are all welcome to share and start with interventions. So each and every one of you which would like to address the Forum of Mayors and which would like to speak, please raise your nameplate. So we will have a special order of addressing the forum. First, the yellow cities, afterwards the white cities, and thirdly, the academia and the diplomats. So in this order, we will be starting with the intervention. Everybody will have a time of 2 minutes to address the podium. So you can speak either from the podium or from your own place. Thank you. We are now commencing with the segment of the Forum of Mayors 2024, which is regarding sustainable development and financing for development. Of course, this segment is, I think, highly interesting and will offer you some insights on financing for development opportunities. But also, I would say maybe the most important thing is hearing you speak and hearing your thoughts. Because, as Paola would like to say, the highest value that we have from this forum is the networking, sharing of knowledge, of experience, and of course, creating friendships that will last a lifetime. I would now, before commencing with our speaker for this panel, like to discuss the Forum of Mayors City Summit of the Future Statement, which you will all have the opportunity to sign tomorrow. Of course, after its final draft is being adopted. And of course, I would highly like to recommend that each and every one of you sign this statement, since it is really crucial for its implementation. In this statement, we have a segment for the Forum of Mayors, encouraging cities to consider the Forum of Mayors as a very effective model in the UN regions to exchange knowledge, best practices, local solutions, and to participate in the work of the UN, considering the SDGs. To encourage cities in cooperation with member states in different UN regions to host the meetings of the forum, and also to request the Secretariat of the Forum to transmit the statement to the Secretary General of the UN as a contribution to strengthening the engagement of local and regional governments in UN intergovernmental bodies and processes, including through the provision of a formal status for local and regional governments in the UN. So I welcome you all to give your interventions, and also upon final adoption of the statement to sign it. I would now like to proceed with the sustainable development and financing for development. As you know, cities are at the forefront of implementing the social development goals and localizing them to meet the needs of urban contexts. To advance the progress, cities need to coordinate with national level and boost capacity and resources to achieve sustainable and inclusive future. Of course, reaching the Sustainable Development Agenda is not possible without according financing. So this is why I am pleased to invite Mr. Diego Aulestia, the head of the Human Settlement Unit from the UN Economic Commission for Latin America and Caribbean, to present the first chapter of the Pact of the Future, Sustainable Development and Financing for Development. Please, Mr. Aulestia, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Good morning to all of you. First of all, I want to express my gratitude to the United Nations Commission for Europe and the Global Cities Hub for incorporating the regional commissions in the event. Greetings from Latin America and the Caribbean. My task now is to introduce the first section of the Pact for the Future, whose title is Sustainable Development and Financing for Development. As you might see in the slide, this chapter contains 12 actions. I'm not going to read all of those, but I want to call your attention to the following topics that in many respects are possible to be influenced by you, mayors and local governments and subnational representatives and heads. You can see those actions in detail. And if we can go to the next slide, in the action number 4, mentions the need to create a more enabling environment that increases the mobilization of resources. However, this is not enough. It must be complemented with enhancing the capacities, institutions, and relevant systems of developing countries to increase investment in sustainable development. These investments, both public and private, must increase the productive capacities, industrialization, structural economic transformation, and infrastructure. In many of these dimensions, the local governments have a say, particularly when it comes to public services that are required to achieve these goals. Beyond infrastructure, the importance of the local government's actions involves housing, risk, and resilience. Many of these dimensions relate to inequalities. Once again, the ways in which local governments, meaning you, implements programs and projects matter, and it matters a lot. The Pact for the Future reaffirms the international commitment to the 2030 Agenda, and, as you can see in the action number 6, there is an emphasis in localization of sustainable development. As it has been mentioned in the opening panel, in the opening section, it's one of the few places where the action of the local governments is highlighted, and it's very important to focus on this. In particular, regarding the importance of ending poverty and strengthening social cohesion. The Pact for the Future, in this respect, highlights a key role of urban settings. As you can see in 25C, there is this emphasis in localization, and as well, there is a mention in terms that the countries, the local governments, the subnational governments, should make all the efforts to ensure the access for all to adequate, safe, and affordable housing, and support developing countries to plan and implement just, safe, healthy, accessible, resilient, and sustainable cities. Planning public policy, formulate public policy, and implement public policy is key in achieving these goals. In these respects, this statement, this paragraph in particular, clearly relates to the Habitat 3 Declaration and the Urban Agenda. In summary, the role of local governments in achieving a better future is central, as it is highlighted in the Pact of the Future. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Aulestia, for your presentation. I would now like to begin with the discussion. As I mentioned, mayors and deputy mayors, we are here to discuss the local level implications of this first chapter of the pact and how it will be implemented. When making your interventions, please consider the following questions that we have for you. You can read them also on the screen above, but in general, what are your city's current or future projects to advance the localizations of the SDGs, particularly in areas like the VLR development? How do these projects contribute to a broader national SDG action plans? The second one to consider is what are the primarily financial challenges that your city faces in securing funding for sustainable development projects? How do institutional, fiscal, and regulatory obstacles impact your city's ability to mobilize investments for SDG-related initiatives? And the third one is what improvements or tools would enhance resource mobilizations and investment in development initiatives within your city? How can partnerships with multilateral development banks, specialized financial institutions, and the private sector be leveraged to address funding gaps and support urban development initiatives? Of course, I would like to mention and stress again that you are invited to request the floor by raising your city's nameplate or country's nameplate. I will invite you there one by one to take the podium and speak. And of course, again, the maximum time is 2 minutes. Yellow nameplate first, white nameplate second, afterwards NGO, academia, international organizations. So just briefly, first, when you start, introduce yourself, naming the city you come from, of course, your name as well, and just relate directly to the topic which has been mentioned and, of course, displayed on the screen above. So please, who would like to address the podium first? Of course, this is meant to be an interactive panel. I think the most important thing is that we communicate with each other. We exchange our experiences and what occurs after these exchanges, as that we see that the challenges that we face are very similar, but also the solutions that we find to tackling these challenges, we also see that can be implemented from city to city. Sometimes even the maybe pure thought of a project or an innovation is something that can be quite different from, let's say, country to country or from continent to continent. So the mindset of people as well, sometimes something that you have never hoped for can be a solution to your problem and you never even thought about it because of the mentality of the surroundings or the traditional environment in which we live in, of the society, and so on and so forth. So let me start with Susan from Glasgow. I'm sure that she has something quite insightful to say. So, Susan, please, if you would like to speak from there or from the podium, however you choose. Yes, please, thank you. So, everybody, I would like to introduce to you the Vice Chair, Ms. Susan Aitken from Glasgow, UK. She is one fantastic lady, and also she is the candidate for the next chair of the Forum of Mayors. So, I would ask all of you to support her, and also let's see what she has to say.
Is this on? Can you hear me? Yes. Thank you, and thank you, Donella. I'm being a bit sarcastic. Don't make friends with Donella, because if she recognises you, she will call on you to speak first. The reason I came up here to speak was because it gave me 20 extra seconds to think of what I was going to say to you, because I hadn't prepared anything. I am very glad to speak on this topic, though. This is a topic that is very close to my heart. In Glasgow, we were honoured to host COP26 in 2021, the biggest event that our city has ever hosted. And for us, having that opportunity focused our minds as a city on how we deliver the sustainable development and the major interventions in our usually 100-year plus old infrastructure and built environment in our city to make us fit for the future, for a decarbonised, sustainable future. And we've focused a lot on how we raise the finance in order to do that. I think we are making progress, but it has been a significant challenge. It's been a challenge for us because as a city, we don't usually set about trying to raise the billions of euros or pounds that we think, or indeed we know it is going to cost our city to decarbonise over the next few years. And so it is something that we've had to learn very fast to grow capacity within our organisation and get a lot of learning very quickly about how we work with, for example, institutional investors at a large scale. And that learning, I think, is something that all cities can share, because I think other than the world's biggest cities, the mega cities in the world, perhaps the New Yorks and the Londons, most cities are not operating in a space where we're dealing with potentially borrowing or bringing in investment in the hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars or euros or pounds. So it is a new thing for all of us. And for me, the creation of financial models which protect our resources, protect the services that our citizens rely on, and we still need to come out of this process educating children and caring for older people and emptying trash cans and cleaning the streets. When all of this is done, we still have to deliver those services, but we also need to make sure that we have enough resource coming in to allow us to be ambitious and to decarbonise at pace, because if cities aren't able to do that, then the world is not going to be able to do that. We believe that we're making progress in Glasgow. We are developing an investment model and also a delivery model to bring in renewable heat source networks across our entire city. And we think that we can do that over the next decade fairly quickly and very significantly reduce our carbon emissions as a consequence. It will be one of the biggest things that we have ever done. But I think back to when Glasgow was still a relatively growing industrial city, when my forefathers as the leaders of the city built a reservoir just outside the city to deliver clean water to a growing city. People in Glasgow still drink water from that reservoir. So we have found solutions to the challenges of the past in cities, and I believe that working together we can do it again. And I look forward very much to this forum continuing to grow in size and significance in terms of its ability to share knowledge and learning and progress among the world's cities. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Susan. And now we go forward with somebody that I don't know, so I'll be calling them up to speak as well. So the second one and first one that raised a hand after Susan is the city of Turku. So please.
Dear Chairperson, fellow mayors, distinguished guests, my name is Pia Elo and I'm the Deputy Mayor of Education in the city of Turku in Finland. That's where it is. Thank you for the inspirational words we have heard today. The city of Turku is fully committed to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals as part of our city's strategy. We aim to be a global leader in climate and nature-related initiatives, and our pioneering role in the Climate City contract under the EU mission on climate neutral and smart cities has been recognized by the European Commission. Our aim is to be carbon neutral by 2029, when we celebrate the 800 years anniversary of our city. We made significant investments in flagship projects that directly support the SDGs. The community-driven Turku project promotes well-being and tackles the challenges such as loneliness, mental health issues, and social exclusion. Another key initiative, the competence flagship, strengthens social and economic sustainability by entrenching skills and ensuring equal opportunities for all, regardless of background. Turku has completed 2 voluntary local reviews, with a third set for 2025. These reviews help us track SDG programs and align our efforts with national SDG plans through the voluntary national review process. Despite this progress, securing sustainable funding remains a challenge, I guess, for all. Also, institutional complexities such as regulatory requirements can slow decision-making and increase costs. To address this, we aim to enhance resource mobilization by improving our strategic planning tools and strengthening public-private partnerships. Collaborating with multilateral development banks and tapping into green bonds or climate funds will diversify our funding options and support our sustainability goals. Additionally, partnerships with private sector actors will bring valuable expertise to accelerate urban development. We encourage all the cities to grow sustainably. But I do want to remind you that while you are growing, don't forget the invisible part of your citizens. Gender equality is not done but should be affecting our city planning, mobility planning, housing, and schools. Keep in mind that women have different needs than men because of the invisible work they do, taking care of the elderly or their children. For example, to be sustainable, you have to see all the citizens of your city. That's how you build a good city for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Turku. Of course, kind regards to your mayor, Mina. And it's very nice to see that she has a deputy that's female as well. So you touched upon several very interesting things. First, discussing about the green bonds, which is, I think, something that has quite an untapped potential for cities. The second one is working with the private sector. Yet again, an initiative that should be highly utilized, especially because the private sector is I think the part of the economy that's most productive and can offer really different insight from what policy we are implementing as cities. And of course, touching grounds with the gender equality issue. This is something that we have great impact in all economies, and of course, because women are half of the world's populations, not only globally, of course, in cities as well. And I think that we should utilize all resources we have in order to showcase the projects that we are doing to be gender inclusive, as well as available for all other minority groups as well. And disadvantaged groups as well. So the third one to be on the podium is the city of Ganja. So please welcome.
Спасибо большое.
Thank you very much.
Уважаемая госпожа председатель, уважаемые участники форума. Я представляю, я мэр города Гянджи, Байрамов Князь. Разрешите передать вам теплый привет из Гянджи. второго по
greetings
величине
from
города
Ganji, the
Азербайджана.
second biggest city in Azerbaijan.
Численность населения около
Our
330
population
тысяч
is
человек.
close to
Ганджа первый и единственный
330,000.
город
Ganja is the
Азербайджана,
first and only city in
который
Azerbaijan
присоединился к
which
программе
joined
Европейского
the
банка
program of the
развития
European
и реконструкции
Bank for
Зеленого города.
Development and Reconstruction, a
Документ
program
был
called
подписан в
Green Cities. The
2020
document
году.
was signed in 2020.
Первоначально были
Initially,
определены
it
три
defined
приоритетные
three
направления
priorities:
твердыми
solid
бытовыми
waste
отходами,
management,
обновление системы
upgrading
уличного
the
освещения
street
и
lighting
общественного
system,
транспорта.
and public
Также
transport.
подготовлен план
We also
действия
prepared
Зеленого
a
города.
Green
В
City
настоящее
Action
время в
Plan.
рамках
Currently, as
программы
part of the program,
продолжается
work
работа
is
по управлению
underway
твердыми
to
бытовыми
manage
отходами.
solid
Общая стоимость
waste.
которой составляет 13
Project
миллионов
total
евро.
stands at 13
А
million
также
euros for
по
that, and also when it
обновлению
comes to upgrading
уличной
the street
системы
lighting
освещения города,
system,
общая
that
стоимость
project
которой составляет
stands
19
at
миллионов евро.
19 million
В целях
euros.
поддержки и
To
развития
support the
финансового рынка
development
в
of
стране
the country's
на
financial
начальном этапе
market,
планируется привлечь
initially it's
в общей
intended to attract
сложности
a total
70
of
миллионов
70
евро
million
кредитов
euros in
на
loans
различные
for
проекты
various
в
projects in the
рамках проекта
context of the Green
«Зеленый город
City
Гандже»,
project in
сохраняя при этом
Ganja,
стабильный уровень
maintaining a
внешнего
stable
государственного
level
долга.
of
В
foreign
рамках проектов
state
планируется провести
indebtedness.
плановые
The
работы
project
в направлении
includes
увеличения
systematic work to
зеленых участков
increase
в нашем
green
городе,
districts in our
повышение
city,
эффективности
increasing the
транспортной
effectiveness of the
инфраструктуры
transport
и улучшение
infrastructure,
устойчивой
and
городской
improving
инфраструктуры за счет
sustainable urban
использования
infrastructure by using
альтернативных источников энергии.
alternative
Хочу
sources of
также
energy.
отметить,
I'd also
что
point out
за
that in
2023 год
2023
государственные и частные
state and
сектора города
private
были инвестированы
sectors
около
of the
12 миллионов
city
евро.
invested around
Хочу также
12 million
отметить,
euros.
что
I'd also point out that
было открытие
we
на территории
opened
17 гектаров, было открыто
over
у
17
нас
hectares
господином президентом
by
Ильхамом
the
Алиевым,
President Aliyev,
президентом
President of
Азербайджана,
Azerbaijan. He
экологически
opened
чистый парк.
an environmentally clean park.
Спасибо за внимание.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your notes. Of course, it's very nice to see that a city in Azerbaijan is working on a green city master plan and how to tackle the challenges that we are all facing as cities with the solid waste. Of course, good to see that smart cities and street lights are something that's on top of your agenda, as well as public transport. I would now like to call on the city of Dushanbe to address the podium.
Thank you so much, dear Madam Chair, dear colleagues. My name is Abdurrahman Zuda Abdurrahman Safar Ali. I'm a Deputy Mayor of the Dushanbe city, the capital of the Republic of Tajikistan. Adopting and implementing the SDGs at the local level is an important condition for achieving the global sustainable development agenda for the 2030 worldwide. It is important to note that the start of the progress in the implementation of the SDGs and the concept of the smart city in Dushanbe occurred almost simultaneously and is outlined in the city development program for the period until up to 2025. The main directions of Dushanbe city development are creation of a quality urban environment, development of education, healthcare, culture, sports, growth, in provisions of quality housing and productive employment, as well as digital transformation. Given the expansion of the city, the share and need for financing infrastructure development is high. At the same time, the city administration is equally guided by the principles of a city for people and leaving no one behind in the implementation of the program and operational actions. Dushanbe's sustainable development requires both the mobilization of financial resources for development and the strengthening of the financial system, including the public financial management. Resource mobilization at the city level offers significant opportunities for allocating SDG financing to SDG implementation. At the national level, processes are underway to harmonize strategic and budgetary planning for more effective implementation of the urban investments, and Dushanbe city administration is actively involved in this process. 52.6% of the budget are social expenditures, This is the support of citizens, development of education and healthcare. 39% goes to the urban environment and investments. The city's budget's revenues are growing, but so are its development goals. At the same time, the city's financing depends on the private resources. The city budget for the 2023 for the last year is 1.6 times more than 2015. And in the city budget, 94.5% of revenues are own revenues, which gives the city Dushanbe the high sustainability and credibility. Consolidation of the city investment projects aimed at achieving results in key areas should lead to the higher returns. The city administration is working to stimulate the inflow of finance, both external and internal, into the city's economy and to form an integral ecosystem of their attractions. The growth of direct investment reflects the fact that the city has the potential to move forward. At the same time, the development of the city in all directions is ensured. In general, there is a need to develop a long-term investment strategy for all of the cities based on the new socio-economic guidelines on the way to a smart and sustainable future. Thank you for your attention.
And thank you for the city of Dushanbe. It's good to hear that you're considering a long-term investment strategy, something that no city should be without. Next is the city of Tallinn. Please welcome.
I also speak from here. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, most honored chair. Ladies and gentlemen, from the viewpoint of Tallinn, I would like to highlight three key elements and that are related to the localization of SDGs in cities. The first element is sustainability governance, the second one is financing, and the third one is enhancing cooperation and knowledge sharing. And to start with sustainability governance, I mean integrating SDGs into local strategies and policies. SDGs address interconnected challenges across social, economic and environmental sectors, and they are indivisible. In Tallinn, we fully align our long-term strategy, Tallinn 2035, with SDGs and national strategies to ensure policy coherence at all levels. Our unified system of goals, targets and indicators allows us to monitor SDGs progress and the implementation of our development plan together. However, having a good strategy, it's not enough. The green and sustainable transition requires collaborative problem solving and integrated solutions across sectors. Often we encounter an execution gap, knowing what needs to be done, but lacking the means, competences or policy process to do it effectively. This gap highlights the importance of sustainability governance, focusing not only on what we aim to achieve, but how we will achieve it. Tallinn has therefore committed itself to work on the topic of sustainability governance. Currently, we are developing a sustainability governance model that emphasizes the ex-ante evaluation of city investments' environmental, social and economic impact, enhances our city's capabilities to break silos and work across departments, improve monitoring systems and foster agility and experimentation in city administration. The key element number 2 is financing, which means moving from silo-based funding to integrated financial instruments. Cities need better targeted investments that address climate and sustainability goals holistically. This requires innovation in institutional design, moving away from siloed governance to open, collaborative and agile systems. The traditional one project, one fund approach to financing is outdated, which has been pointed out here also several times. Cities are the front line in addressing climate change, and we need a shift toward integrated, holistic funding models. For instance, when we renovate residential buildings in Tallinn to improve energy efficiency, we also aim to enhance public spaces, green areas, and mobility infrastructure within the same project. However, current national nor external funding mechanisms are not flexible enough to support this integrated approach. Cities need a long-term financial security to implement their strategic investments and programs and implement innovative projects that promote sustainable development and benefit our citizens. Unfortunately, we are witnessing a growing trend where, despite ambitious statements, many national governments have abandoned the 2030 agenda, and the implementation of the SDGs is no longer a national priority. To ensure funding for SDG implementation, one approach could be to link national and external funding decisions for cities to their integration of SDGs into local development plans. Cities that actively localize and implement the SDGs should be prioritized for support. This would create an incentive for municipalities to align their strategies with the broader sustainability agenda. And the third key element is enhancing cooperation and knowledge sharing. Finally, cities across the world are increasingly interested in localizing the SDGs, as seen in the growing number of voluntary local reviews, which have also, for example, Turku pointed out that they are already making them. And to close the execution gap and facilitate peer learning, for example, Tallinn has established the International Sustainability Governance Hub, a platform for knowledge exchange and collaboration. The hub works with cities across Europe, think tanks, universities, and international organizations like, for example, ICLEI, to help cities to develop transition models and financing solutions that consider the interconnections between different sectors. In conclusion, cities need substantial support, both financially and in terms of governance frameworks, to successfully localize SDGs. Recognizing the central role of the cities and regions in sustainable development is paramount. We need policy and financial instruments that promote holistic, integrated investments. And we need the governance, innovation, and modernize the public administration to support this work. Thank you.
Thank you, City of Tallinn. Of course, being the green capital of Europe, we have a lot to learn from you on this matter. Before going forward to our next speaker, I would just like to remind you of the 2 minutes time slot, because we do have another session coming up. And now, while we're discussing the next session coming up, we have Lady Mayor Fatiha El Moudini, the mayor of Rabat, Morocco, being in line next. Welcome, Mayor.
Thank you, Chair. Honorable audience, my name is Fatiha El Moudini. I'm the mayor of Rabat, the capital of Morocco. So, as the mayor of Rabat, I am dedicated to advancing sustainable development and securing the necessary financing to implement our vision in the city I have the honor to lead, which is Rabat. So, in fact, local governments play a key role in building sustainable future and localizing the SDGs, while at the same time they are facing challenges in mobilizing resources. Indeed, financing for sustainable development requires innovative solutions, such as public-private partnerships and multilateral collaboration and cooperation, of course. So in this context, Rabat has made significant progress in implementing the SDGs, and this happened under the leadership of His Majesty, the King Mohammed VI, may God assist him. Through initiatives like the integrated program, Rabat, City of Lights, Moroccan Capital of Culture, we have focused on green infrastructure, social inclusion, and renewable energy. And this is to pave the way for a more resilient city. So our successes are due mainly to the effective financial resources and mechanisms and strong partnerships with local stakeholders, including the Wilaya of Rabat Saleh Kenitra region, local development companies, key ministerial departments, and of course, civil society and local actors. So in Rabat, we have unlocked the funding streams, including green bonds and climate finance, to support all our projects. However, many developing countries don't have the same chance that we have and still encounter obstacles to access these financial mechanisms. So therefore, today, I urge this Assembly to foster collaboration and innovative cooperation towards a more equitable distribution of resources and to promote new mechanisms of finance. This is to ensure that local governments have the tools and capacity to drive sustainable urban projects. This includes scaling up climate financing and expanding access to concessional loans. So to conclude, I emphasize that our success in achieving the SDGs depends on securing the financial needs and the resources at the same time. Because with commitment, solidarity, and innovation, we can all overcome the obstacles ahead. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mayor Mudni. It was a real pleasure to hear you speak, and of course, it's very good to hear when all stakeholders are included, national and local, in contributing to the implementation of the sustainable goals. Next, we have Mayor of Buenos Aires. So, please, would you take the floor?
Thank you, Chair. I'm not a mayor, I'm the deputy mayor, just to be clear. Junto con Jorge Macri, que es el alcalde de la Ciudad de Buenos Aires, hemos asumido un fuerte compromiso con el desarrollo sostenible en nuestra ciudad. Este año, con el apoyo de CEPAL y el Banco Interamericano de Desarrollo, presentamos la primera estrategia de economía circular de la ciudad. En 2019 fuimos una de las primeras ciudades en presentar The Voluntary Local Reviews y ya llevamos 5 informes publicados. Hoy por hoy necesitamos nuevas estrategias de financiamiento que tengan en cuenta la realidad de cada ciudad. Uno de los grandes desafíos para nosotros en Latinoamérica es el acceso limitado a recursos financieros que frenan proyectos claves. En América Latina, acceder al crédito es difícil, sobre todo porque las tasas de interés superan el 10% en muchos casos, lo que hace que financiar proyectos a largo plazo sea realmente un reto. Esta situación se agrava con la volatilidad económica que ha generado una marcada inflación. Los factores frenan el progreso en áreas como infraestructura verde, transporte limpio y la gestión de residuos. Para nosotros es importante que adoptemos modelos de financiamiento innovadores como los bonos verdes y de impacto social que están creciendo de manera acelerada. Además de aprovechar fondos internacionales como por ejemplo el Fondo Verde para el Clima y fomentar asociaciones público-privadas que permitan compartir riesgos y recursos. Somos optimistas, de todos modos, la demanda global por soluciones sostenibles está creando un entorno de inversión más favorable, abriendo nuevas oportunidades de desarrollo económico y social. En esta línea, es importante, como mencioné, que los bancos de desarrollo, tanto multilaterales como nacionales, adopten enfoques más programáticos para apoyar a las ciudades. Para terminar, quiero remarcar la importancia de que los gobiernos locales sean escuchados en espacios como este para tener en cuenta nuestras agendas. Por eso, muchísimas gracias por la invitación a la Ciudad de Buenos Aires. Es importante que sigamos trabajando juntos para generar ciudades más sostenibles, resilientes, inclusivas y que no dejemos a nadie atrás. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you for that quick intervention. I would like to remind you of the 2 minutes time slot again. Next would be the representatives from Zaragoza. So please.
Buenos días. Muchas gracias en primer lugar por compartir su tiempo en mi caso, con la ciudad de Zaragoza. En nombre de mi alcaldesa, Natalia Chueca, que no puede asistir, les envío el saludo y el afecto de toda la ciudad de Zaragoza. Para los que no nos conozcan, Zaragoza es la cuarta ciudad de España en población, casi la 28ª en la Unión Europea, y tenemos cerca de 700.000 habitantes. Y quédense con este dato porque es un símbolo para la ciudad. Somos una ciudad históricamente comprometida con los valores de desarrollo sostenible, con la cooperación. Hemos destinado desde el año 2005 casi 43 millones de euros a lo que es la cooperación, en especial con los países latinoamericanos, con los que nos sentimos profundamente unidos. Y desde Zaragoza albergamos en el 2008 la Expo Empresarial en torno al agua y al desarrollo sostenible. Somos una ciudad solidaria y en España somos la segunda ciudad en calidad de vida. Y eso es posible, es así, porque siempre en la acción política están los ciudadanos, y la ciudad se convierte en el espacio público mejor para ser todos iguales. Las plazas, las calles, nuestra ciudad es el lugar de convivencia mejor, donde los ciudadanos no solamente convierten en realidad sus sueños, sino que sus derechos se hacen realidad, porque todos somos iguales en una plaza y en una calle. Y en este sentido, la apuesta de Zaragoza por la transformación pasa por ser una ciudad alineada con los objetivos no solamente de la agenda local, la Agenda 2030, que la tenemos implantada en nuestras estrategias, sino también con la misión climática de la que Zaragoza es faro europeo para el ámbito de la transformación y la innovación. Y les decía que se quedaran con un dato: 700.000 habitantes son los 700.000 árboles que la ciudad de Zaragoza va a plantar, que ya ha empezado a plantar con el proyecto estratégico de ciudad que se llama Bosque de los Zaragozanos. Llevamos ya plantados 130.000 árboles, en 2030 plantaremos 70.000, y es un ejemplo de colaboración público-privada. Los fondos los aportan el tercer sector, sector empresarial, y cada zaragozano plantará un árbol en colaboración con nuestras organizaciones empresariales educativas. Han pasado 6.000 alumnos, vamos a conseguir que suponga una alineación con la descarbonización en 120.000 toneladas al final del proceso, y conseguiremos que esto sea un símbolo para la ciudad. Pero no me quiero detener sin decirles que asumo la responsabilidad de ser la teniente alcalde que lleva la responsabilidad del presupuesto y la financiación, y soy muy consciente que los desafíos globales se trasladan a las ciudades y tenemos competencias todavía muy fragmentadas y muy locales. Y por lo tanto, a los poderes públicos, a los políticos, nos hace vulnerables a veces tomar decisiones del presente y del futuro cuando queremos dejar un legado mejor si no tenemos garantías financieras que nos obliguen, que nos lleven a los retos del presente, pero también al legado de futuro con el que estamos comprometidos. La ciudad de Zaragoza destinará 40 millones anuales para contribuir al contrato climático de ciudad para alcanzar la descarbonización de la ciudad en el 2030, alineada con los objetivos de la misión. Pero piensen que las estimaciones son aproximadamente de 1.600 euros por habitante, y que aproximadamente el 25% recaerá en las administraciones públicas y el resto en el sector privado, donde todos estamos conminados a participar conjuntamente. Me despido simplemente dando las gracias por esta iniciativa. Tienen la ciudad de Zaragoza a su disposición para intercambiar cualquier acción y exposición, y he hecho una pequeñísima resumen de lo que es nuestro plan, pero estaremos encantados de compartirlo. Muchas gracias y que tengan una buena jornada.
Speakers are kindly reminded to speak at a reasonable pace despite the time
So
constraints.
thank you for those remarks. We're going forward. I have to tell you that I have been informed that the session ends at 1 for lunch, and the order of the speakers will continue after lunch as places have been taken. Now to go forward with, I would say, probably maybe the last speaker for today, a wonderful lady coming from the mayor of Pichincha, Ecuador. Ms. Mayor, it's an honor to have you here, and I would love to hear your interventions, so welcome.
Gracias, señora presidenta. Un saludo a todos los alcaldes, alcaldesas de distintas partes del mundo. Mi nombre es Paola Pavón, soy prefecta de Pichincha. Venimos con el alcalde de San Miguel de los Bancos desde el Ecuador y para nosotros es muy importante tener una voz en este foro, una voz también de los gobiernos subnacionales del sur global. Termina septiembre y en septiembre, a propósito de la Cumbre del Futuro, hemos escuchado con insistencia el rol de los gobiernos locales para cumplir los objetivos de desarrollo sostenible. Hay una clara conciencia de que si no se incorpora una gobernanza multinivel que incluya a las ciudades, a las regiones, va a ser muy difícil que logremos ese sueño tan anhelado. Quisiera, señora presidenta, abordar el tema del financiamiento y, como lo señalaba, desde una mirada del sur global. Tenemos que comprender que los gobiernos subnacionales tienen distintos estatus. Ciudades pequeñas, regiones medias, ciudades grandes, regiones grandes y potentes. Y también modelos de descentralización distintos, dependiendo de los modelos unitarios de los países o de los países federados. Sin embargo, somos conscientes de que existe una gran necesidad de recursos para financiar el desarrollo y más aún el desarrollo sostenible. En gran parte, los gobiernos subnacionales dependemos de las rentas de los gobiernos nacionales y esto limita nuestro accionar y limita nuestro trabajo. Por eso quisiera plantear en esta asamblea y sobre todo solicitar que una de las recomendaciones en el texto final hable de este tema en particular y que pueda permitir que se amplíe la discusión en el 2025 en el foro sobre financiamiento para desarrollo sostenible. ¿Cuáles son los problemas que enfrentamos los gobiernos subnacionales con dificultades en el sur global? Tasas de interés altísimas de los multilaterales. No podemos hablar de políticas de desarrollo sostenible con esas tasas de interés, y este es un tema que lo subrayo con fuerza. A pesar de la predisposición y la disposición de algunos multilaterales, las tasas son muy altas. En segundo lugar, los plazos que enfrentamos de endeudamiento. Y tercero, las garantías soberanas o los avales soberanos que tienen que entregar las naciones para que los gobiernos subnacionales podamos asumir a esos financiamientos. Estos son tres temas concretos que ponemos en discusión para que en esta asamblea podamos profundizar. Yo quisiera, para finalizar, señora presidenta, estimados alcaldes, alcaldesas, reforzar algo que lo hemos discutido en este año, que he tenido el honor de ser parte del grupo asesor del secretario general de Naciones Unidas, Antonio Guterres. Los gobiernos subnacionales, según el PNUD, de forma directa o indirecta, influimos en los 129 de los 232 indicadores para los objetivos de desarrollo sostenible. Esa es la realidad. Se estima que los gobiernos subnacionales podríamos aportar para la consecución del 56% de las metas de la Agenda 2030. Es decir, los gobiernos subnacionales tenemos cercanía con la gente, tenemos voluntad política, tenemos la capacidad de ser actores claves en los objetivos de desarrollo sostenible, pero sin recursos, sin financiamiento, nuestra tarea también se vuelve cuesta arriba. Muchas gracias, presidente.
I would like to thank Mayor Pavon. We will have the opportunity to hear you speak also at the magnificent panel that we have in line next, which is going to be in the event at the room H200 in H building, which is right next door. Of course, we are right on time, so I would like to thank you all. As I mentioned previously, in line with the names mentioned, they will be continuing with the discussions with our following sessions right after the light lunch that we have. Light lunch is being served before the entrance of the H200 room. And of course, I would like to thank you all for being part of today's event, of course, of the opening of the 2024 Forum of Mayors edition. I would also like to invite you to the Women and Mayor Empowering Urban Leadership for Sustainable Futures event, which will start at 1:15, as I mentioned previously, again at H200. I would like to thank all participants. I'm looking forward to the interesting discussions that you will lead, and of course, as I can see many deputy women mayors, hopefully next term you will be female mayors, because we are lacking. The numbers are going down in Europe from 25 to 16%, Southeastern Europe 8%, my country 2%, being leader in the world, and hopefully we will have many of these strong women examples to see on the future Forum of the Mayors as mayors here present. So thank you all. Looking forward to see you again.
Just